Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming to our very first away day. I'll do a bit of introductions, talk a bit about the housekeeping rules, and then probably go on to the purpose of the session later on. You've all got the agenda and the running order anyway. First of all, in terms of like the time, as I said in the email, we agreed to 2 hours. It was going to be a lot longer before, but based on the discussion we had, it's been tailored to that. I've advised Anu, who I'll introduce to you shortly, to again put a flavor of the leadership issues there as well. Let me start by introducing Anu Vedi. Anu is a retired qualified accountant. He was the group chief executive for Genesis Housing Group, one of the largest housing associations in the UK, a role he held for about 10 years. And under his leadership, the company grew tenfold to be one of the largest housing associations in the UK, and it's still the case as well. In fact, just to give you a perspective, the organization now manages about 66,000 properties, valued about 20 billion pounds, and with loans of about 3.5 billion. In addition, whilst Anu was there, he did establish a community charitable foundation that every year, I believe, Genesis, the parent company, was donating about £1 million. At the peak of his career, Anu was ranked as one of the top 20 CEOs in the UK social housing sector. And in 2009, he was the only BIM in there, and he did receive Commander of the Order of British Empire, CBE, in 2006 in recognition for his strong, innovative leadership within the housing sector. Anu was also a board member of World Child Cancer Charity from 2010 to 2017. And in that period, he was the chair from 2014 to 2017. And he's also been a member of various boards, including City of London and other social entities. Although Anu is retired, he's still active in sharing his expertise and wisdom, particularly in the charity world, and is actually currently a board member for World Child Cancer Charity International. I have known Anu since 2014 in a professional capacity. When I was, one of the leading executives in one organization, I needed his expertise as an executive mentor. And since then, I've kept close touch with him. Anu helped me out with all the board dynamics and the politics and so on and so forth. So please let me warmly welcome Anu Vedi. Yeah. I don't know. Can you all see Anu? Are you on? Just make sure.
I can see everybody.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Now I'll just go on and introduce the team. Sorry, I was on speaker view earlier on, so I couldn't see everyone. Due to time and virtual logistics issue, I'll just probably introduce the team and then get you to just wave your hand so that Anu can see you. So I'll say who you are and your role as well. And I'll do the introductions with the first name because otherwise it would be a struggle for Anu. Anu has met some of us. He's met Lighton, the board. Titi's not here. And he's also met BIM. At one point, we were trying to do some work with World Child Cancer Charity, and BIM and Anu and I, we met at the IOD a while back. That never happened. So you've met the board member. BIM is our Chief Operating Officer. And I'll start off not in any particular order. Bumi, Head of Finance, please wave. Lara, Head of Admin.
Hello.
Hello, okay. Shola, Head of Communications.
Hi, Anu.
Dele, Head of Project.
Hi.
And Anne, one of our fundraising officers. Okay. And then I'll just move on quickly to a bit of housekeeping. You all know that, in the Zoom world, for the benefit of others, if you could keep keep yourself on mute. To speeding up the session, again, I've agreed with Anu. If there's any questions, you can either raise your electronic hands up or put in the chat so that we can move things a lot quicker. I've already said that we are recording. We're recording the session. And apologies, I needed to make somebody else a co-host so that they can keep an eye on the door for me. Lara, I've made you the co-host. Sorry, Moke, we kept you waiting at the door. We're not expecting any problems, but with technology, if things go awry, and if I get kicked out, Lara will pick it up until I get back in. And so that's the bit of the housekeeping. And I'll just go on and, sorry, does anybody have any questions before I move on and set the scene? Okay. Any? None. Okay. I will just share my screen just to move on to the next bit. I need just to give you a quick flavor of where we are. Can anybody say anything?
Nope.
Not yet.
Sorry about that. Technology. Let me try again. Right. Okay,
Yeah.
can you all see something?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought, just to kind of like give a backdrop to the session, that I just quickly give a run through, one for our benefit, for those, some of us have been around from the beginning, others joined in at some point. A lot of the times we probably had all of this before, but mainly for the benefit of Anu as well, just kind of like see. So 2012, we started off, we were inspired by the Olympics, and we had all this, it was meant to be a pilot thing. We did it once, the community said they needed it again, and then we just kept it going, having this community event. During our 5th year anniversary, after about, we had something at the House of Commons. We invited the most influential BAME at the time in the power list, Dr. Tommy Lube. He came to the House of Commons, he inspired us, he was asking us that we need to think big, think institutions, think legacy, and reminding us, using the House of Commons as a backdrop, that, that institution has been there for quite a long time. He used the example of City of London that he was part of, that we needed to think about that. And we took that all away. Within 2 years, we became a corporate entity, and we were supposed to transition to be a charity. We submitted our application in April 2018. We were rejected because we just didn't satisfy the Charity Commission based on the purposes that we still have anyway. They said, looking at it, we felt like a social club. In their view, we had a mixed purpose. We had some education motives and charitable motive, but it was mainly for the benefit of members. And as we all know, to be a charity, your purpose has to be exclusively charitable purpose. So because of that, we were bounced back. Since then, we've attempted, we've tried to use 2 consultants. We tried one at some point. Unfortunately, the guy passed away. The second didn't really work out well. And then, since 2020, we've decided to go down the DIY route, do it ourselves, and with the help of critical friends, to try and help us through. And that's why we invited, someone like Anu to come in and help us out. And Anu kindly has obliged. Can you all see the second screen, by the way?
Yes.
Did it move to the second screen? Okay. I just thought, give you a flavor in terms the steps to get to the charitable stage, starting from where we are at the moment. First of all, our purpose is not that exclusively charitable, so it's a problem. Secondly, it's not sustainable in the sense that we just have this community type initiative to which we rely on solely our members and a bit of corporate sponsorship. And in terms of like making that sustainable in the long run, there's only so much that we can do based on that. You won't get anybody to kind of like support us like in a big way to achieve what we want to achieve. So that means that we need to change track, and hence the reason, you know, we're trying to refocus back on the education. Why is education, as the quote that I've put there says, it's one of the most powerful things that you can use to change the world, a quote by late Nelson Mandela. And so the intention is that we should try and create a charity whereby we can actually leverage in resources to help support education in Nigeria. And for us to be able to do that, there's so many things that we need to address to get to the final point, the final bar there, where we are sustainable and future-proof. And we've been doing bits of it. The board has met with ANU. There's certain things that is already tasked us with. So we're looking at the second bar, the charity purpose, and trying to redefine, re-engineer that. And we're also trying to address the Charity Commission issues that they listed. They hope, you know, they're saying they're not there to stop people from becoming a charity, but you just have to satisfy, you know, certain criteria. And then moving on to the third bar, you know, we need to look at our name, you know, try and get some trustees, and the trustees that we need to get. I mean, originally we were thinking set up the charity and then get the trustees in. But again, based on what we've been advised, especially by Anu, you know, with his years of experience, that it's best to try and, you know, see whether you can find trustees that will support your purpose. And what will they help us do? We'll be looking at 3 specific categories: those that can help us manage the organization, those that can help us fund the organization, either through connecting us to where the fund is, or you know, sharing the network or opening doors for us. And also, if we are sticking with education as a problem, then those that can help us address those issues. In terms like the, you know, the proper, once we've sorted that out, then we need to sort out the governing instrument and the structure, a structure that would enable us to take commercial risk, that would enable us to be able to control substantial assets. And with all of that, we will be able to future-proof the organization. And then moving swiftly on, just to kind of like give you a flavor of the education, the kind of like challenges that Nigeria has that we've been looking at in terms of like data. This is just a snippet at the moment. The board, we're, you know, looking at the data that we'll need to back up the problem that we're trying to solve. So again, just looking at, you know, Nigeria as an example compared to Malaysia and then to the UK where we are. Malaysia, the only reason why Nigeria has been compared benchmark to Malaysia is because, you know, Malaysia was able to transform itself from a developed into a developed economy about the same time since independence compared relatively to Nigeria. And, you know, again, I won't bore you with all the stats, but these are just the economic stats of the 3 countries. And you can see where Nigeria is as well. And then I'll move on to the education stats. Just a snippet, not a lot, just to give you an example of the kind of like challenges that Nigeria has at the moment. You know, out of school children, the second row there, you know, Nigeria had about 10.5 million at some point, equivalent to like the population of London. At some point, Nigeria needed additional teachers, 500,000. That's like the total population of teachers in UK state-funded schools. I mean, the problems are just huge on the education sector that NSF or whatever our charity, the education charity, will be contributing towards resolving. And then just quickly moving on, I only had 10 minutes, hence the whistle stop, you know, and the very quick thing. I just thought I'd leave you with, I don't know whether you've seen this article recently that was shared by Archbishop Canterbury, Justin Welby, regarding the NSAS, where, you know, he was just encouraging Nigerians that, you know, Nigerians needed a lot of heroes and so on. not trying to dictate to us what we should do, but just making a general comment as a I don't know whether a friend of Nigeria, but in his role as the Archbishop of Canterbury. I'll just give you some, couple of minutes to digest that. I don't want to read everything. I can always share this later on. But the snippet was just that, we all need to come together to try and achieve common good for the nation, with the hope that Nigeria can be on its course to prosperity and a glowing future, and the sacrifice that's needed to make that happen. And on that note, I would end my bit and hand over to Anu, unless anybody has a question. And apologies if I can't see your electronic hand. I'm just going to stop sharing. Is it okay to stop sharing?
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't know. Does anybody have any question before I get Anu to get into his own session on my bit of the introduction and the... Yeah, any? No, okay. Over to you, Anu. I will mute myself. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Am I supposed to call you Cornelius or Wole?
Whichever you want, Anu. I'm okay. I think we all know that I could be both.
Okay. Well, thanks very much indeed for that setting the scene and for the very kind, in fact, flattering introduction of myself. I think those 2 or 3 slides that, Wole, that you put up are very apt in terms of setting the scene. And thank you all for giving up part of your Sunday afternoon. And we will try and stick to the time that we've allocated for 5 o'clock. So I would be expecting you, Wole, to bring some discipline into the into the agenda. And although it's not completely fixed, we'll have some flexibility in terms of allowing a free-flowing discussion. But if I'm particularly veering off course or going over time, you've got to remind me. So pleasure meeting all of you virtually. Hopefully, if we all agree, we can, I will be able to meet, or we will all be able to meet sometime next year once we've all had the benefit of the vaccine and so on and so forth. But I think that's a journey still to be progressed. More questions than answers. Just by way of my own background, I was born in Africa, in Kenya. So I consider myself much more as an African than I do as an Indian. My ethnic origins are from India. My father was indeed also born in Africa, and the early part of my education was in Kenya. The real foundations of my education were back in Nairobi in Kenya. As Wole has mentioned, I qualified as a chartered accountant in 1980. And then after a short stint in private industry, my career for the following from 1982 onwards until 2009, when I stepped out of the fast lane, was in the not-for-profit sector. I should say for the not-for-profit distributing sector, which is the housing association sector. And I led Genesis until I kind of quasi-retired in 2009. Genesis, by the way, is now merged with Notting Hill, and the new brand is called Notting Hill Genesis, which has got 66,000 properties. I've always partaken in voluntary work, voluntary roles. In my working life, I had a number of different voluntary roles, including being a voluntary board member of the largest what would in those days called the BME Housing Association, the largest BME Housing Association called UGIMA. But I've been on the board of many other organizations through my working life up to 2009. And as Wole has already mentioned, because I very strongly actually witnessed and felt that housing is not mutually exclusive from other aspects of day-to-day life. I created the Genesis Community Foundation the year after I became chief executive, which was in 1999. And the purpose of Genesis Community was to facilitate, support, both financially and otherwise, the communities and who not just lived in social housing, but also the wider community. Many of those people were not necessarily social housing tenants or residents, and including and particularly young people. So at one stage for 2 years, I mentored 12 young, I call them kids, but young people from the local council estate, all from minority ethnic backgrounds. And I used to meet them once a month in our boardroom, which was quite an experience, I'm guessing, both for them and for myself. So through my working life, I've undertaken or been part of a lot of community organizations. I got out of the fast lane because I had worked very hard, and I was, in terms of balance of health and work, I was advised by my consultant to slow down, but you can't, as the chief executive, you cannot really slow down. And I'd always wanted to do other things in my life. So I gave up at the ripe old age of 54. I gave up my full-time role as chief executive in 2009. Not that I could afford to, but I just wanted to do other different things. So one of the things which really motivated me in terms of my voluntary role was to do something with an international charity. And I was approached in early 2010, 3 or 4 months after I gave up, by the organization called World Child Cancer. Just in terms of cancer, many of you probably will not be aware, children's cancer particularly, most forms, unlike adult cancers, most forms of children's cancers are perfectly curable. The success rate of children's cancers in the so-called developed world is around about 80–85%, and some cancers maybe even 90%. So between 8 and 9 out of every 10 children in the developed world actually survive cancer. Of course, the success rate of survival for adults who've contracted cancer is nowhere near that high. But what motivated me to consider joining World Child Cancer was just one headline. And that is the fact that in the low to middle income countries around the world, only 10 to 15% of children with cancer actually survive. Contrast that with 8 to 9 out of 10 children compared to 1 out of 10 children in the low to middle income countries. And that disparity says it all. You know, we live in a world which is very divided between North and South, rich and poor, even within countries, huge disparities. Look at the United States, for example. But children are innocent victims. Why should they suffer? So that was my primary motivation of joining, when I was invited, joining World Child Cancer. At that, World Child Cancer had been set up fairly recently. Before I joined it, became a registered charity in 2008. Its first project was in Malawi in 2009. Now, just to give you again an overview of the business model of World Child Cancer, the trustees who founded World Child Cancer before my time, both the medics and the business trustees, felt the charity should not be necessarily exclusively a grant-giving organization, but one which facilitated, which helped those hospitals in those host countries to be empowered and to help themselves. So the model is a fairly unique model. Again, in very headline terms, as the Chinese adage states, don't give a man a fish to eat, but teach a man how to fish, and they can be more successful. So the model of World Child Cancer is a twinning model. Twinning meaning that each hospital that World Child Cancer supports in the host country is twinned with a hospital in one of the rich countries, whether it's in the United States, in the UK, in Europe, and even in Singapore. And twinning means that the medics, the doctors and nurses of the hospital in the rich country will train, help, support. Locally, these medics, the doctors and nurses actually give up their time voluntarily to go to these host countries and support the doctors and nurses in those countries. The role of World Child Cancer in that context is firstly to assess the viability of any new project. And that takes between 1 and 2 years to assess the viability in terms of the business plan, in terms of who the project director is going to be in the host country, and whether the outputs and outcomes of that 5-year business plan are actually deliverable. There is a committee, a projects committee made up of some of the world's top oncologists who actually assess any new application or an application for a new project. And only when the projects committee give the green light for a new project will the main board support the project. So currently, since the first project back in 2009, over the following 10 years up to date now, excuse me, World Child Cancer has got, I think, 13 projects. Primarily, well, I say primarily, mostly in Africa, in countries like Ghana, Cameroon, Malawi, Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and so on and so forth. And then we've got projects in Asia, in Bangladesh, Myanmar, Vietnam, and another project in Mexico. So there are 13 projects. Each project obviously has its own uniqueness. The glue that holds each project together is a project director who actually reports back to the main board here in the UK with what has been achieved over the previous 3 months in relative to the business plan. And through that discipline, we then make the agreed grant to the project every 3 months in retrospect, in arrears. When I joined World Child Cancer, the income of World Child Cancer at that time was around about 250,000 pounds. We had a part-time director, a part-time fundraiser, and one admin staff. A lot of the legwork, the real work, was done by trustees. And the trustees that were on the board had essentially were under two labels. We had the medical trustees who supported the project, who advised on oncology matters and so on and so forth. And you had the business trustees whose primary role was to do the fundraising, open up their address books and spend a huge amount of time meeting with possible donors, corporate donors, making applications to trusts and foundations, organizing events and raising monies from private individuals. Today, my friends, World Child's Cancer, I was told the other day, is approaching, from that humble start of 200,000 pounds, is approaching 4 million pounds. And this is excluding the incredible and massive work that the volunteers do. Not the trustees here in London, in the UK, but I'm talking about the doctors and nurses from hospitals like Great Ormond Street and the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, and hospitals there's a hospital in Singapore which is linked to our project in the Philippines. It's twinned with the project in the Philippines, and hospitals in the United States, and so on and so forth. Actually, the voluntary medical aid is quantified and audited by the auditors, and is stated in the accounts of World Child Cancer as tangible income, but is matched by the same amount of expenditure. So the point I'm emphasizing here was that particularly in the early days, the role of the voluntary trustees, with whatever background they came from, as I say, medical background or business background, was instrumental in getting the charity registered, but also instrumental in the journey of expanding the work of World Child Cancer. To the extent that when I became chairman in 2014, in that year, at the first time of applying, World Child Cancer was successful in becoming the Charity of the Year for the Financial Times, which was a massive milestone, both for three reasons. One, it gave us a huge amount of publicity, gave us credibility in the general world that this was a charity which was credible. The Financial Times had chosen it. It actually opened a number of doors for us. Secondly, the Financial Times themselves and their staff organized various events, fundraising events, and they raised in that year £1 million for World Child Cancer. And thirdly, something which also over the following 3 years raised about £2.5 million was funding from the UK government through what was then called the DFID, the Department of International Aid and Development. Because DFID felt, here is a charity which is doing great work. It's got the credibility of being Charity of the Year for the Financial Times. And So they supported us under very, very strict criteria over the following 3 years, allowing us to open a new project in Myanmar, allowing us to expand our projects in Ghana from one hospital in Accra to another hospital, I forget the name, forgive me, in another city in Ghana, but also allowing us to expand our projects in Bangladesh. So the point I'm emphasizing here that we should all take on board is success breeds success. Credibility encourages governments, corporates, trusts and foundations, and other institutions to support the charity. So the initial hard work, and it will take time, you know, I want to kind of continue to emphasize this. It will take time to get NSF or a successor charity in relation to education in Nigeria to get started. It will take a huge amount of time, but it'll take a significant amount of effort from all of you and others to get it off the ground. Are there any questions before I carry on in terms of the journey of the charity that I can address in relation to World Child Cancer?
There's one on the forum, but oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Shola.
Yeah, I raised up my hand as well. Oh.
All right, okay. Okay. Shola first, and then you next, okay? Thank you.
Okay. So I think the key question for me here is, what were the key challenges of getting, you know, World Child Cancer from having an income of 200 to 250K, like you've identified, to 4 million, excluding the contributions of volunteers?
Yeah, the challenges are like with any relatively new charity, was selling the message. What is the message? I mean, for me personally, as an individual, the headline message of children, only 1 in 10 children surviving cancer in the low to middle income countries compared to 8 to 9 children, was a message. It was, how was that message delivered was the challenge for us. We didn't have any marketing budgets. We didn't go around advertising, etc. But it was really word of mouth. It was organizing, like for example, even when I was before I became chairman as a trustee, and even since when I became chairman, I used to, I'm just giving you this as an example, I used to organize a breakfast meeting strictly from 8:30 to 10 o'clock at the club of our then chairman, Gordon Morrison, called the Caledonian Club. And the idea was for busy individuals who worked in corporate life at pretty senior level to come along, sit around a table. There were no more than 10 people. 2 or 3 of them were from World Child Cancer, to have a slap-up English breakfast, but actually for the representatives of World Child Cancer to talk about generically what the impact of children's cancer is, the work that World Child Cancer were doing, the need for funds that, for example, £50 would save a child's life in Malawi, you know, through chemotherapy, drugs, and so on and so forth. We didn't collect any funds through at the time of the breakfast or at the end of the breakfast. But what it actually did was spread the word. Often those individuals did not contribute themselves, but what they did do was make introductions to their own companies or to other companies, you know, to allow us to put ourselves forward to become that company's charity of the year, for example. And, you know, it wasn't always like becoming charity of the year for the financial times. We became charity of the year for smaller companies who maybe only raised, I say only, it was, you know, it was really valuable, who raised £5,000 for a small company through their engagement of their staff. So the challenges were about the commitment of the business trustees of World Child Cancer, opening their address books. I spent probably, as a trustee, I probably spent on a ratio of 10 to 1 my time in between meetings, having a cup of coffee with, you know, my contacts, business contacts, personal contacts, social contacts, trying to fundraise, trying to spread the word. So for every 1 hour I spent in a trustee meeting, I spent 10 hours promoting World Child Cancer, doing fundraising. So that, in essence, was the challenge. Even the input that one had to give to becoming Charity of the Year for the Financial Times was quite incredible effort. What happens with the Financial Times is ultimately the final decision maker are the 800 staff of the Financial Times from around the world. So the executives of the Financial Times go through an intense interviewing process and then they choose, they shortlist down to 2 charities. And those 2 charities are given 1 hour each at a lunchtime to talk to the staff of the Financial Times. Interestingly, not just the staff here in London, which are about 400, 450 out of the 800. They had a back office in the Philippines of 40 people where their IT and accounting functions were. They had staff in, they've got staff in Hong Kong and staff in New York. So my chairman, our chairman then flew to New York. Our director flew to Hong Kong. Fortunately, the project director in the Philippines went to the local office of the Financial Times in the Philippines, and I hosted the lunchtime 1 hour here in London. And the role at that time was, or the task was, to convince the staff to vote for us as a charity. And ultimately, World Child Cancer was successful by 10 votes. So in a nutshell, Shola, to answer your question, it was the time commitment that primarily by the trustees that had to be given to get the charity to a level where it was self-sustaining and able to, through the professional staff. Now World Child Cancer's got 20 staff, half of whom are fundraisers. But to get to that sustainable level where it was able to raise funds through their own fundraising efforts, the input by the volunteers was absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Has that answered your question, Shola?
Thanks very much, Anu. I'll give way to Mokena. I have a further question, but I'll give way to
Okay.
Jumoke, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Anu, and I apologize for not showing my face. My question, before I make a question, I want to make a comment first. And
Sure.
the comment is, I listened to you passionately how the One Child Cancer started. And I think what I've gathered is that the organization in itself is purpose specific. And you backed it up with data to show the need for this particular project, if you want to call it a project. So in itself, like you would say in business, it's sold its own self, because when you reach out to people straight away and you give them the facts and the reasons, it would get people hooked onto it. So that's fantastic. My question now is this. I also note that you said you have 13 projects at the moment, and you're dealing with certain hospitals. I just wonder what was the criteria of actually selecting the countries that you are working with at the moment? And I note, and I am a bit not upset that Nigeria is not part of it, but I note that Nigeria is not part of it. And I just wonder, what was the criteria of choosing the countries that you work with, and also the hospitals that you work with? Are they private hospitals? Are they government hospitals? And what was the criteria? And I know you twin with people here in other countries, and I can see why anybody would twin with this organization, because what you're doing is a fantastic thing. Like I said, it's purpose specific and it speaks for itself. So I just wonder those bits that I asked just now, how you decide which country, and yeah.
Sorry, Anu, just to declare that you probably missed that, okay, the start of the meeting. I did say that Bimbo, we tried to make something happen in Nigeria, not from lack of trying. Can you imagine yourself? We went from education to medical. That's part of, we're just hoping all over the place. But anyway, Anu, please.
Yes, you've made a number of really very, very good points, and thank you for asking those questions, and as well as the observation. We don't have any hard and fast rules about selecting countries. Yes, there is some criteria. For example, safety. I'll give you an example. We soon after the Malawi project, we started a project in Colombia, a very small project, but within a year, that project had to be closed down. It failed simply because of the security situation in Colombia. That, fortunately or unfortunately, that's been the only kind of failure out of all the projects. So that's my first point. The second is, as I mentioned in my introduction, the key, the glue that holds a project together is the project director. In Ghana, for example, we've got a phenomenal project director who has expanded the project so brilliantly, Dr. Lorna Renner, at the main hospital. I forget the name of, you're welcome to obviously look at the website of World Child Cancer. Lorna is now on the main board of World Child Cancer. She has been such a success over the last eight or so years since the Ghana project that the number of, apart from the number of children who are being treated in Ghana, and this is not just within Accra, the parents of children with cancer travel from all over the country to the main hospital in Accra, don't quote me on these figures, but from a point where between 10 and 20% of children in Ghana were between 10 and 20% of children were surviving cancer. Now I gather 40% plus of children in Ghana survive cancer, which is a phenomenal, relatively speaking, success rate because we've raised awareness. We helped parents. That was one project I actually visited over 3 days in Ghana. So we actually helped fund a small building within the hospital compound where the parents who brought their children could actually stay overnight for a week or however long it took for their children to receive medication or chemotherapy. Because a lot of parents obviously do not have the resources. They've got, perhaps 2 or 3 children in the village who also have to be looked after, and they don't have the facilities, let alone the resources, to be able to travel half a day by public transport to Accra and leave their other children alone. So the project director is a key person who holds the project together. We have been trying to get a project off the ground in Zambia. And because the project committee, who are made up of, as I mentioned, made up of pediatric oncologists, have not been convinced on who the project director was going to be in Zambia, that project has not. It's got the business case, but it hasn't convinced the project committee to sign off on that project. In relation to the hospitals in the richer countries, there is no criteria. These are hospitals which are primarily, I've mentioned, Great Ormond Street, UCL in London. These are all public hospitals. I'm not sure about the status of the hospitals in the United States. They may be private, stroke public, or both. Likewise in Singapore. But there are plenty of medics in a lot of these hospitals who would be willing, are willing to sponsor another hospital in the low to middle income countries and give their time up voluntarily to support the doctors and nurses working in those hospitals. And you know, nowadays with technology, it's absolutely wonderful. I've seen this live myself, where you know, through what we are right now, what we are doing, which is through a Zoom call, children are being treated by oncologist sitting in his or her surgery here in London, and he or she is then instructing the doctor in one of the low to middle income countries on giving chemotherapy or whatever other treatment. So you know, it's a wholesome approach. It's not just about giving money. Yes, money is part of it, for equipment, for drugs, but it's also training the doctors and nurses in those host countries so that they can help themselves. World Child Cancer is sponsoring a couple of doctors nurses and doctors from Cameroon and Ghana. At least that was the case 2 years ago when as I was stepping down from World Child Cancer, to be trained in South Africa for 2 years. So we were paying for their wages, for their living costs in South Africa, to allow them to go back to the Cameroon or to Ghana and continue with their good work. So it's a wholesome approach. Each project has got its own nuances, and you know, it is about sustaining. It's about sustainability of the project, which has to be assessed at the outset and on a quarterly basis, through regular detailed reports from the project director. I hope I've answered all your points. But
well, thank you so much, Anu. You answered it, but the bit about the hospital, even though you answered about the trained hospitals here, I was actually also referring to the hospitals in the host countries. How do you select them? Are they private hospitals in the host countries or public hospitals?
Public hospitals. They're all public hospitals.
Okay.
And I'm sure I'm probably right in saying, as you know, do correct me, but a lot of hospitals, I should say, throughout Africa are both public and private. So if you're a rich citizen, then you can be treated in the private wing. It's much like, you know, hospitals in the UK. Great Ormond Street has got a private wing. UCLH has got a private wing for private beds for private patients, as well as for to be treated through the NHS. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. My other questions I would save for later.
Right, okay. Shola next. Thank you.
Hi, Anu. Thanks very much. And happy to be guided by you, Anu, because my next question may fit better into your next session on strategy going forward. But what I was keen to understand from you is, in your experience of moving the organization forward, how did you motivate your team? So when you're dealing with a team of volunteers, and people, when they volunteer, actually do it from a really altruistic point of view, and they're keen to contribute in whatever way they can to a specific goal. But as time goes on, I find that contributions and participation probably varies in terms of how they do. And people sometimes step back, some people sometimes step forward a little bit. How do you keep that motivation, and how do you carry your team along with you in the vision for the organization?
Gosh, I wasn't expecting such challenging questions on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you very much. Very good point. My experience was that actually, in terms of motivating the medical trustees and the medical volunteers, that it was no issue. A lot of the doctors and nurses from these hospitals actually wanted to. They knew, they knew, acknowledged, and felt passionately about the disparities between between the rich world and the poor world. It was very simple. They didn't need to be sold the fact that a very small percentage of children in the low to middle income countries will survive. So they wanted to make a contribution. In terms of the business trustees, yes, that was always a challenge. As chairman, one of my key roles was, as trustees retired or resigned, we had a 6-year rule. I had to then go and recruit new trustees. I actually employed a very large and well-known recruitment consultancy here based in London, who helped do the search. And it was a very intense interviewing process, selection process, because one had to be careful between selecting those individuals who might be just doing it for altruistic purposes, having on their CV, I'm a trustee of World Child Cancer, as compared to actually putting their money where their mouth is, opening up their address book. So I recruited several new trustees. Apart from actually the physical formal interview process, I then followed that up with at least one, and many occasions, 2 meetings on a one-to-one basis, outlining very clearly to the potential trustee that this role is not about attending a board meeting every 3 months and patting each other on the back and feeling good about it. I made it very clear that's the least of your tasks. What I'm looking for as chairman is for you to, and I used to say, to open up your, not just your checkbook, but your address book. What are you actually going to do yourself to make introductions to potential donors, corporate, individual, etc., etc. So that I said, I don't want to then have a discussion after you've been appointed to say, hang on, you are not adding value. The real value add will have to be your work in between formal board meetings. Staff were motivated, yes, because we paid a market salary. They were motivated by the senior management team. The chief executive who I recruited in my time came from Save the Children. And again, they were motivated by the cause, but also the need for wanting to expand the services and influence and impact of World Child Cancer.
Okay, good challenging questions from the group from the meeting. We're now running about 12 minutes, or yeah, about 11 to 12 minutes behind schedule. So we'll have to try and catch up in the next bit of it. I know you had a bit about, in terms of the future vision, a session for what type of organization do we want to be, and a discussion point. So I don't know how you want to lead that.
Yeah. Let me. As I said at the outset, I think we must have this as an interactive session. So I would encourage people to continue asking questions. I suspect we will not have, at the end of the day, we will not have enough time, but I'd be happy just to say at this moment in time, if people want to come back to me over the telephone after today's meeting, do give them my contact details. I'm happy to talk to you individually if you wish to either email me or pick up the phone and have further discussions, because I know we will run out of time. So moving on, one of my motivations when Wale spoke to me a few months ago, and at that time, before COVID hit us and hit the world, the intention was to have a actual meeting in a proper room and spend a good, if not a whole day, but at least half a day. But my motivation, apart from having been born and brought up and educated in Africa myself, was, in fact, I won't repeat, but Mandela said it in the slide that Wale put up right at the outset. Education is the most powerful tool for change. I believe that passionately. We've got a huge amount of problems. I don't need to tell any of you throughout Africa, problems primarily because of governance. The powerful are too powerful and they suppress the majority, and what they sometimes consciously, in my knowledge and my experience, also do is not provide enough resources and priorities for education, because they know once there is a relatively educated population, they will ask questions, they will expect transparency, they will expect accountability by the people in positions of power and authority. So that was my motivation of wanting to assist in whichever way I possibly can to date, and if you want me to be involved into the future. Some time ago, Wale sent me as much data as he possibly could on NSF, the articles, the business plan, the job descriptions, the structure chart, etc., etc., etc. And the idea initially was, well, how can I facilitate or help you achieve a successful registration with the charity commissioners? I can tell you, not in a million years would you get, and I'm being very candid, as you get to know me, I don't mince my words on certain things, because I do want to cut straight to the issue. Not in a million years, under your current constitution, will you get charitable status. Not in a million years. NSF is currently constituted is more, and I borrow your words, Wale, it's more of a social grouping. It's got a mixed message of wanting to, in terms of organizing social events in London, and if and when you are able to financially send across some education material to Nigeria. So there is a lack of focus in your constitution. It's a mixed message, and you need to revisit the purpose of how do we actually refocus our purpose for improving education in within Nigeria. Just so that I can share another interesting statistic, which often frustrates me in a variety of ways. You know, we are all labeled, now the new term is BAME, previously it was BME, etc., etc. Many years ago, I was looking at the educational attainment of children in the UK from minority ethnic groups. It did not amaze me, it surprised me, but it did not startle me that whilst, for example, you know, people from all the countries in Asia are labeled Asian, likewise, there was a category called Afro-Caribbean. And in terms of that category, the educational attainment of children in terms of their GCSE attainment came towards the bottom of the ladder. When I dug deeper, actually, right at the top of educational attainment of children, this was in relation to GCSE results, were children with an African background. Right at the bottom of the league were children from a Caribbean background. But guess what? It suited the English to put, the British that is, to put that whole grouping into Afro-Caribbean. So as I say, it did not surprise me because I know how ambitious African parents are for their children. There are a whole variety of reasons why the children from Caribbean backgrounds are not as successful as other minority groups. However, that is in the UK, where education is provided on a relatively equitable basis. So in my judgment, and I'm sure in your judgment as well, education is the key towards the journey of Nigeria becoming a developed country as opposed to a developing country. So I think one of the discussions, and I'll pause in a couple of minutes for your comments, we should be having this afternoon is revisiting the purpose of NSF. And I think there is 3 options, being very candid. Option 1 is to leave NSF as is. You do wonderful work, you organize the sports day, families come together and you all have great fun. You collect a few funds which pay for the facilities of the day and other activities through the year. So that's option 1. Option 2 is to say that is not, that we can carry on with, but we need to consider constituting a entity, a specific charitable purpose entity, solely focused on education in Nigeria. There are 1,000,001, and I mean literally 1,000,001 options in relation to that, which we can come on to today or at a subsequent session. So that's the second option. And the third option, which I suspect will probably not be acceptable, is to say we disband NSF, but put all our energies, all our efforts into setting up a truly a charity with the sole purpose of promoting working on education, enhancing life's chances for children in Nigeria. So that, I think, are the choices in front of us. It depends on the appetite, all of you, the commitment, the time commitment, and saying to ourselves, right, we are now going to embark on a journey which will probably take between 1 and 2 years, again being not just from the experience of World Child Cancer, but other charities as well, to actually be in a position to register a charity with the UK Charity Commissioners, because that registration will give you the ability then to be able to go to donors under whatever category it is, because it is obviously then potential donors, potential supporters, then know that the charity is regulated by the charity commissioners. It's going to have to be audited by auditors, and they will get a lot of comfort in wishing to and wanting to support the charity going forward. So I'll pause for a second and have that open, Wale, with your agreement, let's have that open discussion.
Yes. Before we do, just to emphasize, as you've said, that we're a long way from making any decision. This is just the beginning. As I know, it will probably take a couple of years. So this is just about blue sky thinking at this point. So, you know, the floor should feel free to say whatever they think in terms of the options, but there's nothing is going to be agreed now. You know, it's just to start the thinking going.
I've got my hand raised up.
Actually, sorry, Shola, before I come to you, Jumoke's had a hand up. I don't know whether that was for the previous session.
Anu, thank you so much. And I must be a mind reader, because before you gave those 3 options, based on the background you've given us, those were my thoughts. However, this is the key issue for me. Right. Even if we refocus and we get the charity status, and that's hurdle number 1, you made some key points about sustainability. You made some key points, and what are the ingredients of that sustainability? We're talking about security, we're talking about governance, we're talking about transparency, accountability, and all the works. Now, and I hear what you said, where you said it's not because Nigeria has done anything wrong, but when you mentioned the first thing and you said security, straight away, my head went into overdrive, because those things you mentioned, if we're going to be fair, and I like you that you're very frank, because I'm a very frank person too, those are the challenges we have in Nigeria. Now, even if we get the charity status eventually, the next question is it going to be sustainable? Would people want to sponsor a project? Because you said you did a project in Colombia, and one of the problems was because it had problems, it was not sustainable. It eventually crashed. Now, what I'm asking now is, if those ingredients are not there, even if we get the charity status, because I think this will help us with our decision making as well. Do you see us actually, do you see it being a project that will be sustainable if we embark on this journey eventually?
Right. Okay. What I would ask you to do is turn your points on its head. The issue of charitable status is an outcome of a process. It should not just be what you should be aiming for at the outset. It should be the outcome of a process. What we need to be discussing, what all of you should be discussing, is what is the vision? What is the vision that we need to have for this new organization? As I said, education has got hundreds of different aspects to it. Is it male, female? I'm sure you will all agree, like in a lot of the poorer countries, women, young girls are unfortunately more at a disadvantage than their male brothers. Is it about primary education and or secondary education? Is the vision about the organization, the charity eventually being a campaigning organization? Is it going to be a grant-giving organization? How does it work with the government in Nigeria, the local state governments in Nigeria? How does it interrelate with other educational bodies within Nigeria, the education department? There are probably dozens of education-related charities within Nigeria. How do we relate to them? How do we link up with them? So I think the discussion there has to be the vision. What is the focus that we want to put? We have to start with, at a pretty basic level, but keep in mind what that wider vision is. There's a lot of research that needs to be done in relation to even getting to that point where we can crystallize or agree, discuss, debate, and crystallize a vision. Once we've got that vision, then we can start discussing the strategy to get the charity off the ground at a practical level. How do we, beyond the vision, how do we now go out and search for trustees who either want to, successful Nigerian people within the UK and in the richer countries, and there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of professional Nigerians, successful business people from Nigeria, etc. How do we approach them, either to join this entity as trustees and or as supporters and or as influencers and or as donors? So all that work, that discussion still needs to be had. But we have to stand back and say, one, yes, we're going to focus on education, but what does education mean in the context of what is it that we want to put out, where do we want to put our focus on? Is it junior education, senior education, university education? Is it male, female? Is it helping gifted children whose parents can't afford to keep their children at school, giving by providing bursaries? I mean, I'm just throwing a few things that come to my mind, but I'm sure there are dozens and dozens of other angles to this.
Thank you, Anu. So means to an end, so to speak. Shola, you got your hands up. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thanks very much, Anu. And you've actually partially answered my question. And I'm going to throw this out because I know that in terms of, you've pointed us in terms of your view on how we want to focus on our vision, and then based on the vision, focus on our strategy to accomplish that vision. But just, I would like to just seek your views on, you've given us a number of options in terms of continuing NSF as it is, in terms of, how we run our activities. Secondly, we may be solely focused on education in Nigeria, or maybe we want to disband and reconstitute NSF based on a number of means, based on an end that we have in view. Now, my question to you is that based on these three scenarios, what, in your view, are the pros and cons in terms of accomplishing our vision? So if we continue as we are, what is your view as to how, in terms of success, or in terms of pros and cons and to achieving a success? If we, based on your experience, and I know your experience is not based solely on Nigeria, but based on your experience on African countries, what is your view on if we solely focus on education in Nigeria? Or on the other hand, the third scenario you've described is, what if we reconstitute NSF and we totally rethink our focus and we totally rethink of where we want to go? What are the pros and cons in your view on all these scenarios?
Excuse me, I'm laughing, but yeah, I'll try and again be very open with you. I think what I've assessed from my limited time getting to know all of you, and prior to this, the previous session, and Wole, and reading your documentation, I think NSF is a worthwhile club, if I can, forgive me if I'm using that term in the wider sense. It's a good social organization which allows you and your friends and families to come together at various events. And perhaps that should continue as is. There's contributions people make to organizing these events. That's fine. It's good. It gives an audience for you to capture a wide, capture a wider group of people. However, I think one of the things I would ask you to do after today's session is to come together again and say to yourselves in a constructively open and constructively challenging manner, now, how much capacity have we got? Your capabilities are there. Your passion to make a difference is there. Otherwise, you would not be giving up this Saturday afternoon. You want to make a difference for people less fortunate than ourselves, yourselves, back home in Nigeria. You have that passion. How much capacity have we got? How much commitment are we all going to give to the cause of improving, enhancing, influencing education in Nigeria? That has to be a very open and a very candid discussion. And beyond that, you then, I suggest you then allocate tasks to different people, different tasks to different people, because a lot of research has to be done. I don't know the figures. What is the percentage of children who complete secondary education or don't complete secondary education? What are the disparities between girls and boys in education in Africa? What is the disparity between urban and rural? What is the quality and standard of education in Nigeria? How can that be enhanced? How much per capita of central government funds is put into education in Nigeria relative to what should be put in? All that research needs to be done. And these, what I've just outlined, the 4 or 5 examples, is just maybe the tip of the iceberg. Another task would be, okay, now what do we need? Who do we need to encourage to join or at least support the cause, not necessarily join the new entity, but support the cause of education in Africa. I've mentioned, and I won't mention them, the names now, but I've mentioned to Wole beyond this meeting that I would be very happy to make an introduction on a no obligation basis to him to talk to 2 or 3 of my friends stroke colleagues from Nigeria who are relatively successful in the UK in their own right. There are a couple who are quite influential within Nigeria as well as in the UK. Now, they themselves may not be able to give as much support or input, but I'm quietly confident that they will point us, you, in the right direction. So, I think these are steps that need to be taken. Momentum has to be kept up. Motivations have to be measured all the time. New people, new ideas have to come in. The world will become normal, hopefully sometime after the middle of next year, where people can physically meet. and discuss matters. And those are the sorts of steps. I don't think it's a case of options. I think the options follow after everybody being reasonably well informed and then crystallizing, I wouldn't say crystallizing, because crystallizing suggests that it is getting things written in tablets of stone, but the evolution of the vision will come through those steps. And then as that evolution happens over several discussions, then the vision can be laid out as to what this new entity is going to be focused on and how it's going to achieve its goals. It may just start off with, and I'm not throwing this as my particular idea, it may just start off by sponsoring a dozen young girls from the rural areas to continue their education who otherwise may not be able to because of a lack of resources by their parents. It just might be something as simple as that. Let's kick off with something straightforward, simple, where you know you're making a difference to a few young people's lives.
Thanks very much, Anwar. That's been really thought-provoking, and I'm sure we'll take this forward and rub minds.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from the rest of the team in terms of?
Can I ask a question, Wale?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Dede.
Anu, thank you very much for all you have said, and clearly, as you can see from the questions that have been put to you, you've really set us thinking. One thing that I would want to know is, do you, in your opinion, think, from your experience, is there any option? I mean, do you think there's any mileage in having a subsidiary that focuses on education, has the name NSF, but we still leave the bits that you call the club and the social bit, but we have a distinct bit of it that focuses on education alone? Would that get us, in your opinion, do you think that will get do you think governance as a result of what I've suggested would be enough to get us registered?
In one word, the answer is no. The charity commissioners, through the unfortunate experience of other charities in recent years, have become very, very strict. All of you will recall, was it 2 or 3 years ago, the experience of Kids Company, a very high-profile charity based in the UK, Kids Company, run by this flamboyant lady, hugely successful, and that collapsed literally overnight. So what they will be looking, the charity commissioners have, their own criteria, their own way of wishing to make decisions. What they will not be receptive to is, firstly, registering a subsidiary of NSF as a charitable entity. They will certainly not do that. They will want the vision and purpose stated very clearly, and all the resources in a transparent manner being given to the cause of the charity, which is why I said the option for us on the table today is to continue with NSF as is. It does all its great work, but to actually focus on separately or setting up a charity with the sole purpose, sole focus of making a difference in Nigeria. Because ultimately it is, think about it this way, it is about the beneficiaries. That's what the Charity Commissioner is going to be asking about. Who are the beneficiaries? If you say the beneficiaries are going to be the people of Nigerian descent who live in the UK by having these activities and events within London, that's not a charitable purpose. On the other hand, if if we are able to articulate and say that the beneficiaries are going to be this particular client group, the underprivileged, whatever the client group might be within Nigeria, then they can see that the beneficiary of the funds that will be raised by the charity in years to come, not just in the following 12 months, but in years to come, are purely focused for that purpose.
Okay, thank you. So in other words, what you're saying is that if we're leaving it as it is, it has to be completely remodeled.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bimbo, next. You're muted.
Yes, Anu, thanks so much for everything so far.
Sure.
Yes, I'm taking it in and doing some things in my head as well. Just going back to what you just said about beneficiaries, I think you're under the impression that the beneficiaries at the moment are us in the UK.
No. I'm
quite,
sorry, carry on.
at the moment, I mean, the beneficiaries of what we do are alma maters back home in Nigeria, really. So I don't know whether we've got our wires crossed anywhere or
No,
if you just want to share.
I'm conscious. I mean, at the moment, from what I've seen, the resources, the funds that NSF raises are pretty limited, relatively speaking. And how the funds are raised are through social events. And the net income from these events then goes towards supporting the educational elements in Nigeria. That's right, isn't it, generally speaking? So, you might raise, let's say, for example, hypothetically, £100 at a particular event. The event has cost £70. £30 is what is the net profit from that event, and that £30 goes towards Nigeria. What I'm saying is that we need to that's fine. That is for a good cause and for a good purpose. However, it isn't enough to get registration as a charity in the UK, because if I haven't, unfortunately, I didn't get the your constitution articles printed, but it states very clearly that the and I can't remember the language used, but that the purpose of NSF is as a group, as an entity which organizes functions within the UK, within London and within the UK. It also is for the purpose and benefit of people within the UK, but with a purpose also to support the activities relating to education in Nigeria. What I'm saying very clearly is I think those things need to be divorced. It isn't very clear, which is what
that's what the charity
the reply from the charity commissioners, which I have seen some time ago, clearly stated that.
Yeah. The only thing they identified that we were doing that was charitable was the education bits that we're doing in Nigeria. But they did say you can't mix that.
Yeah.
You can't have a mixed purpose. It can't be done. It has to be exclusively charitable things that you do. And the message was quite clear. And in terms of like the social club effect, the first option, I mean, we've been running that for, I don't know, about 8 years now. We all know how limited it can be. The past 2-3 years, we've been fortunate that we've had an old boy kind of like supporting, the cost really. Otherwise, financially, it's not just sustainable. It's heavily subsidized. The community is not willing to pay how much it even costs to run the event, without the subsidy. So it's limiting. I mean, when you start having the vision of, as Anu was saying, with World Child Cancer Charity, where they actually have paid officials. I mean, we've been fortunate that, volunteers have actually committed for so long, doing this for quite a long time, just solely on their passion. And as Shola says, they will come in and then they will come out again. We'll find new replacement. But it's not just sustainable, and there's only a limit of where we get to, and that's it. And beyond COVID, I even doubt that, businesses that support us, that we may be able to get them back very, very quickly. That may be another issue as well, if we, continue to be as we are. So there is a big challenge, and that's what's been on the bothering the board and bothering us for quite a long time. And in terms of like I know you recall when you had the board session, you left us with quite a bit of a homework. I know that the board's been busy. So we'll probably at some stage have a session whereby we share, what that is with SLT and, how we then take that forward. We cannot decide how we contribute and take that forward. They're big decisions, unfortunately. It seems as if we won't get enough. We won't get enough support for the social thing. It's just the reality of the thing. Meanwhile, if we go on the education, we are widening the scope. We're changing the narrative, and potentially we can get more support, within the community and also outside the community, and being able to access other funds as well will be the aim of the game. And we'll be able to have paid official staff, have offices and all those things as well.
That's much further down the line.
Yeah, I know.
My personal view and advice would be, to have as a next session, have a session to get some consensus and some agreement on whether out of the three options I mentioned, which one of the three options do you want to progress? I'm not going to influence you in one or the other, but that's the next session I think you should have. Beyond that, or even at the end of that session or that discussion and agreement, allocate some headline tasks to individuals or teams of individuals, two people working together. I think you should touch base with the Nigerian High Commission here. Get the right person on board from the Nigerian High Commission to give you as much information, as much data as they possibly can about the state of education within Nigeria. So that could be one task by one person or a team of two people. Another task would be to start listing who are the high net worth individuals of Nigerian descent in the UK and in the Western world, and how do you try and make contact? So get a database of those people, high net worth. Then linked to that, thirdly, could be people of influence with Nigerian descent. I can't remember, forgive me, I'm getting on in life, but there are a couple of MPs in the UK Parliament who are Nigerian descent. Let's talk to people. I'm sure there are dozens of lecturers and professors of Nigerian descent at British universities. Let's get a list of those and, one by one have a discussion with them. They'll, point us in the right direction, if not personally get involved. And I think that kind of those processes or those tasks will themselves then put you in a much more informed position to allocate gaps within the Nigerian education system and allow us to have that discussion of that vision within of the new entity that is going to focus on education in Nigeria. And also there may be, you know, sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier on. It's a question I'm asking all of you. Are you aware of any entity, it could be charitable, it could be non-charitable at this stage, any other group of people like yourselves who are actually working for the purpose of education in Nigeria from within the UK or elsewhere in the Western world? Are there any other entities?
Yeah, we are aware of, and we partner with at least 2 other entities.
Okay.
No, at least 1 other entity, and I'm thinking of Britain Nigerian Education Trust. They are like a grant-making body supporting teachers generally and other educational projects in Nigeria. So there's that one. We're aware of another entity from here, but doing some work in Ghana as well. So I'm sure there are quite a few of them. We just have to speak with them and try and understand their model.
Yeah.
Sorry, Moke, you got your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what the question Anu also asked. I'm not sure if Anu is also aware that NSF is made up of, it's a collaboration of alumni, and each individual alumni actually helps the school. They raise funds and they actually directly help the school in Nigeria. And it's specifically for the schools in Nigeria, nothing to do with us here in the UK. So that is something that I just wanted to bring to your attention. So as individual schools, we all do that individually.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that, but that also is a reason that you will not get registration of for charitable purposes, because you're not allowed to discriminate. I mean, I'm an alumni of my old school in Nairobi, but if I wanted to support as a charity education in Kenya, it would have to be on a non-discriminatory basis. I mean, it's all very well. I mean, I do respect and laud the support that you individually are giving as alumni to your respective schools, but it would be a good reason for the charity commissioners to turn down your application.
Oh yeah, no, what I suppose what I was trying to say with that is obviously the schools are not registered as a charity. That's just what they do as individuals in their own right. So maybe when we come together as NSF, we may have to look at that towards the focus of being a charity. So that would be a completely different direction. I was just trying to say that these are things that individuals did, not as NSF. They did them, they do it as their own individual.
Yeah.
It would be
Can I ask
once we're registered for our schools to be beneficiaries is I think what Anu is alluding to. It would be a difficult thing to, you know, so those are the kind of like hurdles we need to, you know, clear and make sure that we understand what we're getting into. We will have to, you know, detach that, cut off that and just support education in Nigeria, not addressed at any particular schools. It will be a bit difficult. Sorry, Bimbo, you were.
Yeah, the question I wanted to ask is, I know that I don't know whether any of the current membership, any of the schools that are members of the NSF at the moment are charities, but I know that in the past, I think maybe Methodist Boys or one of the schools was a charity. Well, yeah. So say just for argument's sake, if the individual schools had their own charity status in the UK, yeah, would we be able to go collectively to the Charity Commission and get something for NSF as a body or not?
You mean a school in Nigeria which has got UK charitable?
No.
Sorry.
No, I'm talking about a school, an organization, one of the alumni associations, which is a member of NSF in the UK. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They're an alumni association of a school in Nigeria. However, they have charitable status in the UK as a charity.
Sorry, can I jump in before I know those? I think what happened previously was it was easier to register as a charity. I think you'll find out if you ask Kingsley, they've probably tossed them out or something, or made it very difficult for them. Because I think every year there's certain criteria that you have to meet. Being a charity, yeah. You know, I don't know, they've got certain criteria that you've got to, you know, you meet with your accounts and your disclosure notes to them. I know what's a lot easier. People were registering all kinds of things before. They've tightened up quite a lot since then.
Thank you very much, Wale, because I was going to say maybe 15, 20 years ago, there were more charities registered in the UK than any other country in the world. But as Wale has just said, they have curtailed, they've reduced the number of charities or deregistered a number of organizations which were previously categorized as charities.
They've increased the bar, you know, so it's just difficult. It was easy registering as a charity before, but now very difficult. I think I always suspected that 2 hours was never going to be enough for this discussion. So unfortunately, we have to have part 2. I know that others have since then arranged something else to happen after 5 o'clock. So we cannot, we have to finish at 5 on the dot. I know in terms of like the content of the agenda, is there any other area that you?
No, I think we've covered it. I mean, the discussion has gone as well as I would have expected, and thank you everybody for your participation and exceptionally appropriate and pertinent and clever questions. The second thing I want to say is, as I mentioned earlier, I would be very happy to take a phone call or take an email from any one of you individually going forward. I am very happy to help on a no obligation basis, people with their own thoughts. So, Wale, you know, if people want to get my contact details, give them my email address. Happy to talk. I think we've got a reasonable idea of next steps. Perhaps you should have a further discussion on the next steps, either later on today or at your next group meeting. And then do let me know if you want, thirdly, happy to give you the, to make the introductions to the people, influential Nigerian friends or colleagues I know based here in London, and 1 or 2 of them in Nigeria. Very happy to make those introductions. Again, they can only point us in the right direction, either saying go and talk to X or Y or Z in Nigeria or in London. So I'm happy to do that. And then let me know if and when you want me to get further involved along the journey.
Thank you, Anu.
Thank you.
Just to say that I know that my colleagues at the board that we've already started making some progress in terms of like getting data from Nigeria, setting up like a target list of potential people that may be influencers or sponsors or something. Now that, you know, we've had the other bit of the leadership team part of this conversation, obviously we'll widen that and we'll have joint meeting in terms of moving it forward. The way I see it happen in terms of like the next stage, we'll probably have our internal discussion, you know, make sure that we have some of like, I don't know, consensus on where we think the options should be going forward. And once we've made that decision, we'll probably then get you back in, still remaining as a critical friend in supporting us. I think for us, the crucial thing is that registering as a charity is not the end, you know, it's actually the means towards the vision that we're hoping to formulate. You know, so it's not, and that's what we're doing, trying to get experienced people on board to come and talk to us, be you, others to come in and say to us their journey, so that it helps us to understand and probably fast track our journey as well to get to the end game. So on behalf of my colleagues, I'd like to thank you, Anu, for
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
for coming, attending, and sharing with us your wisdom. We all enjoyed this session, and also to thank my colleagues as well. As Anu pointed out, you know, your commitment and passion to give up your Sunday to come and listen to a topic just as charity registration. I did say to you that it's an interesting thing, and at the time I think you were all a bit worried that it would be a boring thing. I told you, I said we needed 2 hours, but I couldn't sell it. And I was getting private messages now, can we extend it? And I'm like, I can't extend it. Yeah, you know, the main person that was saying, oh, no, I'll be bored now.
Don't mention the person's name. We know the person. Don't mention the name. We know the person.
I am the person. I am the person. I am the person.
That's it. We know the person.
And I don't have a problem to actually say I am the person, because to be quite honest, I think the way Anud has approached the subject matter and his delivery has made a huge difference, because I have listened to people and sometimes it's about your delivery. Anu, well done, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. All the
And that means you have the votes for second session.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
I was the
yes.
one that actually requested for more time.
And just before, as a parting shot, I know. Do you know what your name means in Yoruba? I know.
No, I know what it means in Sanskrit, but carry on.
It's mercy.
Mercy.
Mercy on
You know, Bimbo, you actually, I've just put up my hand and I was just going to ask Anu what his name means.
Yeah.
In age, because yes, in Southwestern
Yoruba,
Nigeria, it means
mercy.
that's exactly what I was just going to say.
Oh, well, you made my
Thank
Sunday.
you.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
We
Thank you.
really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks so
Bye.
much.
All the best. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you, bye, Anu.
Bye.
Nice meeting you
Bye.
verbally.
Bye.
Bye.
It's gone. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we just probably.
We'll stop recording now.
We'll have
I think Bimbo is gone.
Yeah. Do we
okay.
need to do the debrief now? Okay, let me call Bimbo and Shola.
Shola has left. Are you still recording, Wale?
Yes.
Stop recording. Okay.
What I thought you had